a geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause they're Cleveland and a geek.
And welcome to Cleveland and the Geek, presented by Blackstack Brewing. Now in stores all over Minnesota, available to you. I'm John Bosa, Twiz Daily. With me, Aaron Gleaman of the Athletic.
Back-to-back series wins, John. Can you imagine?
Back-to-back series wins. I can't imagine. I was there. I was seeing them.
Yeah, but it'd been a while. I didn't know it was still possible.
And
really.
Do you know why?
Do I know why? Yeah, okay. Where was that yesterday, though?
I didn't have it lit yesterday. I'll take series wins. Series wins I'll take as credit. For those of you who are listening to audio right now and not on video, which we are now available on YouTube, I just showed Aaron the prayer candle, the TC Bear prayer candle that's burning
true.
brightly.
We have to be more descriptive and not assume everyone is on YouTube. But
that's right.
So it took them a month to win one series, and then no time to win a second series. Similar, but actually both series were sort of similar. I mean, first of all, the Rays and the Cubs are both good teams.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cubs are definitely going to be a playoff team. I think the Rays are more likely than not to be a playoff team, although
I think right now they were the number one wild card team, or at least they were entering that.
I mean, they're just going to have more competition. But you win the first two. The Rays one, you kind of fumbled away the third game, whereas the Cubs one, they didn't really ever have much of a chance to win the third game. Same thing, though. It's one of those where you're thrilled to win 2 out of 3 from a good team. You're thrilled to win a series and then back-to-back series. But, you know, these third games, making a habit of dropping the third games. But, yeah, Rocco Baldelli, I would say yesterday in particular, post-game, was more so than I've ever seen him before focused on the series outcome versus the game outcome. And he's normally, I would say, kind of the opposite. Like, he's like, oh, you know, a lot of times he'll be like, it's fine. We played 2 good games, but I was disappointed in today's game. This one, and he paired the Cubs with the Rays, which also isn't something he really does, is look back or look forward that much. But I think it kind of speaks to, and I'm mostly in agreement with the stance he took, which is like, we played 2 good teams. We played 2 good series. We won both series. This is a major steps in the right direction, which that's undeniable.
Right. Yes. And you can see that would be his attitude after going through the last month before that.
Yes. You know? I mean, just in the position they're in, I totally see that. And we talked at this prior to the first game of this homestand, which is now 6 games old, and there's 3 left against Pittsburgh. It starts tonight, which we're going to talk about. But we said that there were at the start of the homestand, there were 21 games remaining until the trade deadline, which is on July 31st. Which is actually an off day for the Twins, which I think is a good idea because it's a busy day, and it always seemed odd to me to trade a guy at 3:00 and then play a game at 6:00. I remember Nelson Cruz had to get informed right before a game at Target Field, and then I remember 3 years ago when they traded for Michael Fulmer, he was with the Tigers, and walked across to the different clubhouse, and I watched him do it, and that was just strange. It just creates very strange situations. But they needed to go in those 21 games to make it to 500 at trade deadline day. They needed to go 13-8, and they have gone 4-2 so far, which means you now only have to go 9-6, which I'm not going to say that's likely for a sub 500 team. Obviously, it's not, but that seems a whole lot more doable than 13-8. And, you know, particularly now they have 3 against the Pirates to end the first half. Then you get an all-star break. Then you come out of the break with at Colorado, who's one of the worst teams in baseball history. Then you do get the Dodgers, but then after the Dodgers, you get the Nationals back home, and the Nationals just fired their manager and their entire front office. So there is an opportunity here to keep doing what Baldelli was talking about, which is just play good series against good teams and bad teams, take 2 out of 3, keep kind of climbing out of this hole a little bit. And I still don't think it's likely that they go 9-6. And I mean, to be honest, being 500 at the trade deadline is a great accomplishment. But in my mind, at least that's, you know, it's a round number too. But it at least says to me you can take whatever path you choose to take because of the wild card spot at that point.
Yeah, we were trying to. One of the things that we were looking at on Twins Daily was like at what percentage does this front office believe they are actually in this thing versus not in this thing? And the one example that sprung to mind was 2017, right, where they trade for Jaime Garcia and they're at a certain level of playoff probability, and then they trade away Jaime Garcia when they're at a totally different level of playoff possibility.
He made one start.
He made one start, right? Because in a week it had changed that much. And I think we looked it up, and it was something like they were at about 25% when they traded for him, and they had shrunk down to, I don't know, 15%, something like that, or 10% by the time they traded him away. And so, I don't know exactly what record that sort of comes out to, but right now, or had they, let's see, they're what, 3 games under 500 right now, right?
Yeah.
And so, if they take 2 out of 3 from Pittsburgh, they would go into the All-Star break 2 games under 500. If they are 2 games under 500 at the trade deadline, I think that still means I don't think that they're selling. Do you?
Well, it depends a little bit on the rest of the wild cards.
I agree.
Because
this was why we were really trying to do it more based on like Baseball Prospectus's playoff probability than we were basically on record, right?
Yeah.
But it feels like that number would be close enough that they'd be like, we're not blowing this thing up just yet.
Well, like I've said this before, and people have disagreed, but I think they're going to be motivated not to sell if all things are equal, if it's sort of a coin flip. I think that is, whether conscious or subconscious, because of the ownership situation, the front office being in flux, this being year 8, and if they miss the playoffs, this will be 4 out of 5 missing the playoffs with this front office. So, I think they might not tell you that, and honestly, they might not even think that, but I do think if it's a coin flip, they will lean more towards either standing pat, which they've done the past 2 seasons, despite having 75% playoff odds. So, but I wrote, and we talked about this in the last episode, and I wrote about it for The Athletic a couple days ago too, which is like, I do think that there's a lane to take that is selling, but only the impending free agents.
Right.
And we reviewed on the last episode, they have 6 of them. I would say at least 3 or 4 are definitely going to draw interest from teams. Guys like Willie Castro, Harrison Bader will probably draw some decent interest. I think if you're still below 500 on deadline day, that is a real path to consider, but you're also not going to get, huge long-term assets for those guys. You're looking to trade those guys for future role players, future middle relievers. Maybe you hit on a prospect or 2. Right. That's great. You're basically just trying to cash in players who are going to leave for nothing in 3 months for some semblance of equity or some, future. It's almost like in other sports trading them for 6th round picks. It's not that the 6th round pick's that valuable. It's that then you can use that 6th round pick later and trade for something. So I do think that's the path. If we're being honest, standing pat until proven otherwise is what I think they'll do largely. But I will say this is now pretty consistent over this homestand and the end of the previous homestand. There are scouts galore from other teams, and they are there, not making a secret that they're looking at Twins players to trade for. They're asking around about people. They're talking to each other. They're talking to us. And I just have this in the back of my head. We can sit here having covered the Twins for 2 decades and having covered this regime very, very closely since 2017 under Falvey. And we can go through what they did the last 2 years and how they've tended to stand pat since the ownership, / payroll a couple of years ago and all that. And I can sit here and say, I think that is the most likely outcome until proven otherwise, because if they're standing pat with 75% playoff odds, why would they go for it with 25% playoff odds? And then the flip side is we can have the discussion we just sort of had, which is, well, if that's the case, then wouldn't they sell at 25% playoff odds? And I think maybe lightly selling goes a little bit hand in hand with standing pat in terms of like a direction. Yep. And yet we can think we lean that way because our experience with this front office and knowing how they operate and knowing, of course, the ownership situation being up in the air and all that, Meanwhile, though, I keep having this sneaking suspicion as I see 2 new scouts from 2 new contending teams show up for every home series. I don't think that's by accident.
Yeah,
I don't think that's without any, push in terms of info that they're getting, whether from the Twins or from teams that are dealing with the Twins, or from just gossiping around the league, or them just, trying to do the same calculus that we're doing here and coming up with a slightly different answer. I think, when I'm seeing nationally contending teams and American League contending teams that are definitely bound for the playoffs, teams that are sort of in the wild card mix with the Twins, plus or minus a few games, and they're sending people to go look at Twins players, that does tell you something, I think. It tells you that at the very least they haven't shut down league-wide the notion that they might be selling, and more than just selling the impending free agents.
I think when we talked a little bit about this, you also mentioned, now you're specifically talking about contending teams. You know where these scouts are from, right? You're talking about contending teams.
Yeah, they have to. In a fun twist for those of us who like to gossip and people watch, they have to identify themselves. They're wearing badges, and they're wearing usually polo shirts with the team on it and all that. You can't because I think the idea is it's a little bit of like the whole Patriots Spygate thing.
Oh, I suppose, yeah.
The idea is if you're kind of going into enemy territory as a spy, and I'm not saying anything nefarious is going on, but if you're sending someone to go get information, identify yourself when you come through the front door,
as opposed to scouting them as a competitor because you've got a series coming up 3 weeks or 2 weeks from now, something like that. Yeah, right.
And it's not necessarily that, because I think that is sort of a typical advanced scouting. I think so much of that is done on video the last few years, but so that to me adds a layer of intrigue, and it also kind of. And I don't mean to make it seem like scouts never just show up. They do show up. But this has been a noticeable increase, especially this part of the season, where it's like, oh, there's so-and-so from fill-in-the-blank team.
Right.
Wonder why he's here. And it does halt my assumptions a little bit, or, kind of rein them back a little bit, where I'm like, am I reading this situation wrong? But it could also be that the Twins, with still now 3 weeks exactly till the trade deadline, have conveyed the discussion that we're basically having, which is we don't know what path.
We don't know what we're doing. Yeah, right.
And teams are wanting to get background just in case, basically.
On the topic of light selling, the problem with light selling is sometimes when you see, teams like we've seen some teams try to kind of play it both ways at the trade deadline. Cleveland's famous for
the Rays do it.
The Rays do
almost
it.
Every
you're
year.
right. You're right. But yeah, both of them pretty regularly.
And those, by the way, are the 2 organizations, and I don't even think Falvey would deny this, that the Twins are essentially modeled after.
Right, exactly. Yes,
Falvey came from Cleveland, Baldelli came from the Rays, and they've hired guys from those organizations, and they've sort of modeled their approach, which those are 2 good organizations to do that. But when we have this discussion, it's like, ooh, could the Twins see themselves as sort of continuing to model their path?
Yeah. I would be interested to see. Here's the thing. Even the light selling type of path that you're talking about. One, you raise a good point, which is, are you really going to do any sort of selling if what you're getting in return is not anything particularly valuable? You're getting, like you said, some future assets that you can maybe package together, aren't necessarily going to lead to a game-changing pitcher in the future, et cetera. Now, if something great comes along, maybe you consider that. Here maybe somebody really needs a center fielder, and Harrison Bader's sitting there, and they're willing to give you a top 100 prospect. Like maybe that is something that could happen. But the problem is that almost all of those guys at this point, it's not like the Twins have a lot of extra margin for error here. When the guys that they would be trading, Willie Castro's batting in the top 3 of this order right now, and there really hasn't been a lot of other, great performers around him. Danny Colomé is a pretty valuable member of this bullpen right now. Harrison Bader is, your center fielder right now, because we're going to talk about Buxton's injury, and has been pretty much an everyday left fielder. He certainly has the most starts in left field of any of the other Twins. So, you can say, well, we're going to kind of get rid of, we're going to lightly sell. Those light sales leave a hole that this team is going to have to deal with. And for a team that is on the fringe of the playoffs, fringe of the postseason, or thinks they're going to try and, that's a hard thing to swallow for both management and, I would guess, the players.
Right. I agree. And I don't think this is just a typical year in terms of, hey, if we miss the playoffs, we miss the playoffs from a front office and ownership standpoint, or from a fan standpoint too. But I also think, in my mind, light selling, yes, individually, those guys are unlikely to bring, impact prospects or anything like that. But you never know. I mean, you want to get as many lotto tickets as you can. And, we could certainly point to examples throughout Twins history coming and going where they traded a mid-level prospect for a rental or something like that, or they acquired one for a rental back in the day. And those guys, turned into not star players, but solid regulars. That has huge value because A, you need that talent. B, you need that young talent. And C, that means those guys are cheap for a lot of years, which is becoming more and more important for the Twins, just like it was back in the day. But I guess also when I think of like light selling, it could also mean what you're targeting in return for those guys.
Right.
Like, yes. I think I view it kind of two ways. Lightly selling to me would be trading away guys you are imminently going to lose for nothing, which is 6 free agents. They're going to become free agents on November 5th or whatever it is. I think it's highly unlikely the Twins would re-sign any of them, although not impossible. And so, you might think, what are we going to get for Willie Castro? That's so great. What are we going to get for Harrison Bader? That's so great. And it does take a chunk out of whatever small, long shot playoff odds you have. But if you get 1 or 2 lottery tickets for 5 different guys, one of those lottery tickets, if you do a decent job scouting and negotiating, is going to turn into the next Willie Castro or the next, Danny Coulomb, like useful, solid regulars. And they need that. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. They need that. They need quality depth. But then the other half of, in my mind at least, the notion of kind of lightly selling, or what you said is kind of being on the fence of like, we're going to sell, but we're also going to acquire. Right. And how that's a fine line to walk. That could just be about, what are you targeting? Are you targeting most, selling teams, selling off veteran players are trading a 30-year-old to a contender for 2 19-year-olds. That's how it goes usually.
Right.
The Twins, though, because of various factors, including some pressure maybe on the front office, including the idea of kind of selling and buying, all that, maybe they target, if not major leaguers, then AAA guys who are going to be immediate major leaguers. I mean, they did that with like Joe Ryan in 2021 when they got him, and he was a good prospect, but he wasn't a great prospect. He was a 25-year-old AAA pitcher with the Rays, kind of stuck behind guys in the Rays organization. They acquired him in the Nelson Cruz trade, which is going to be a phenomenal trade. I mean, it already is. And he was in the rotation a month later. And that, I think, could be an example of like lightly selling, but doing so in a way that you're targeting major leaguers or very close to major leaguers. And then in your mind, it's like, okay, we traded Chris Paddock, let's say. Yes, that leaves a hole in a rotation that is not exactly thriving up and down right now. But if we acquire a AAA pitcher for Chris Paddock, even if he's just sort of a mediocre pitcher, well, if we think he can just step into the rotation, you kind of do both currently, but then you also get more future value. That would be the needle to thread.
I'll give you another needle to thread, which is, I think, less encouraging and maybe more skeptical, which is they might need to match salaries that they send away for salaries they get in. That might be part of like, we want to trade for we need to trade for some pitching. We need to free up about $2 million in salary to be able to afford this to afford this hitter. So therefore, we're going to trade away a starting pitcher that makes $6.5 million to free that sort of thing up. That is not unheard of in Major League Baseball as well. It seems kind of penny-wise and pound foolish for a team that's trying to make the playoffs.
That's their motto, though. Penny-wise, pound foolish.
That's exactly.
If there was something less than a penny, they would do that. If there was a half penny, they would be half penny-wise, pound foolish.
Ton foolish.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although, to me, sitting here 3 weeks out, if there's 5, let's say there's 5 actual paths that a team, not just the Twins, but any team can take. You can aggressively buy. You can lightly buy. You can stand pat. You can lightly sell, and you can aggressively sell. That's simplistic. To me, the 2 least likely paths for the Twins are to aggressively buy is by far the least likely. Of course. And lightly buy is by far the second least likely to me. And so what you're describing
Yeah, I would put it as aggressively sell would be the second least likely, but I
Yeah.
understand. I understand the sentiment. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, I guess that's semantic too. I mean, we can argue
Yeah.
what would it mean to aggressively sell? Like in your mind, which is a scary place to be. The mind of John Boners. That's going to be
anything more than Durant and Jax is aggressively selling.
well. Okay, what I was about to ask.
And you were going to say, are Durant and Jax aggressively selling?
Yes.
That's the borderline, right? That's the delineator.
I would view that as aggressively selling.
Okay.
Even one of the because I'm assuming if you're at the point where you're trading even one of Jax or Durant, you're also trading as many of the impending free agents as you can.
Yes, right.
And so I guess that cumulative effect to me would qualify as aggressively
all right
selling because those are just really good pitchers. Like
right.
those are, I can tell you, we've been updating. I do it with Eno Saris, Chad Jennings, and Tim Britton at The Athletic every 3 weeks now. And we'll do another one right before the trade deadline. We've been doing a trade deadline big board for The Athletic. And we update it based on the ebbs and flows of who looks like a buyer, who looks like a seller, and then who are their players that become available or maybe, kind of get pulled off the market because the team's on a good run, like the Red Sox or something like that right now. And I can tell you that both Duran and Jax were in the top 10 of the big board that we released, I think it was 2 days ago. And so they might drop down a little bit in 2 weeks when more teams emerge as sellers, because there'll be a little bit more, a few more stars to add to that top of that list. But I guess what I'm saying is there aren't going to be a whole lot of relievers and maybe even just players in general traded who are both better than and under more team control than Duran and Jax, who are both all-star caliber relievers and have 2 additional years of team control beyond this current season. So basically 2.5 seasons of team control. There just aren't going to be a lot of guys who are more valuable than that. And so in my mind, if even one of those guys gets traded and like a Willie Castro, Harrison Bader, Danny Coulomb, let's say, something like that, I do think that would probably fit under aggressive selling. And I guess those are the type of moves, Jax, Duran, maybe a hitter like a Trevor Larnach or something like that. Somebody who's got a couple more years of team control. When I start to see scouts in town, that's where my mind goes when I'm like, they could probably use it. This team that's just about definitely bound for the playoffs,
right?
They could use a late inning reliever. They could use another lefty bat, something like that.
Well, that is countering my own point just 5 minutes ago. In terms of trading away players, Durant or Jax, I could see them trading away a player and then also acquiring somebody as well. Like those two, there is enough depth in that bullpen right now that is an area where I think if they were just sort of rearranging things, like, okay, we're going to trade away some pitching, but we're going to get some hitting back because that's where we're really suffering. And that means, trading away Durant for some prospects, but then trading away some prospects for a hitter. I could see that happening. Like that would be a way. That would be the way to do the Tampa Cleveland 2-step that we're talking about.
Yeah, I also just think in general the bullpen, and the Twins are not alone in this stance. I probably personally would kind of take this stance too. Is that the bullpen's different? Relievers are different.
Yeah,
it's much less. I don't know. I think they would view it as much less risky or much less sort of team altering.
Yes,
to trade a reliever who has 2.5 seasons left, than trade Joe Ryan or something like that who has 2.5 seasons left, or even a key position player who has 2.5 seasons left, because they made Griffin Jax a great reliever as is. Right.
Yes.
And
we've seen it over and over in terms of what they will invest in and where they will take their chances. They will take their chances on the bullpen and they will invest in the other.
Correct.
areas.
I think it works on both ends. One of which is, yes, we're trading away 2.5 years of a reliever, but we know that most relievers aren't great for 5 years. Right. And these guys have already been great for 3 or 4 years. So maybe they burn bright and fade away before, their team control expires. But then beyond that, what is their bullpen right now? Duran was a former very good starter who had elbow problems and moved to the bullpen. Jax was a formerly not even really a prospect starter who was terrible in the majors as starter, got moved to the bullpen at age 26 and immediately was a good reliever. Brock Stewart was a scrap heap pickup who was coming back from Tommy John surgery and had been a failed starter and injured And then Louis Varland had struggled for 3 years with them as a starter, and they moved him to the bullpen, and he's immediately a good reliever. So I think there's a sense of
Danny Coulomb, by the way, is similar. Right. The guy who was on the fringe of a major league roster for years, and then ended up breaking through with Baltimore returning to the Twins. Right?
And it's a similar story. You want to go Glenn Perkins or Taylor Rogers. I mean, it's a similar story. More often than anything else, great relievers are made, not born, and that. I'm not. That should not, in my mind, take away from Jack's and Duran's value or their impact that they have made and could make if they stay with the Twins. But I just think it's different than trading away like a middle of the order hitter, because with relievers, I truly think, and we can debate how effective they've been at doing this, but I truly think the Twins are among many teams, and certainly the Guardians and the Rays, who we just mentioned,
right.
They do this every year, basically. They count on doing this every year, which is we're going to uncover 2 more good relievers. And sometimes that makes or breaks the season. But that's why I kind of look at Jax and Duran and say, are they going to turn down massive offers for these guys?
Right.
If they're at 20% playoff odds on July 28th or something like that, I don't know. I mean, it would have to take a lot. Yeah. And I know there are Twins fans who have reacted to us discussing this sort of stuff over the last several weeks, or me writing it or whatever, and they're like, why would they trade Duran or Jax? Why would they, you have 2 more years? I get it. Like, I'm not saying they should,
right,
or that they should be desperate to move them, certainly. But if you're about to miss the playoffs for the 4th time in 5 years, and somebody comes knocking on your door with a big offer for a relief pitcher,
right, and that happens at the trade deadline. Relief pitchers get oversold at the trade deadline. Teams who need a relief pitcher understand that they will pay. They're going to have to pay extra at the trade deadline for that. So that's what I think. We're not going to learn that this weekend against the Pirates, but that's what I think we're going to learn coming out of the All-Star break. I mean, those are the paths that they're going to have to take, and winning back-to-back series against good teams, that's really good. It doesn't mean a thing if you loosen up your grip of that line now against the Pirates. Like, you need to win 2 out of 3 against the Pirates and start to make this thing interesting. It was a very fun weekend at the ballpark. I mean, yes,
the 3 consecutive 30,000 plus crowds that were about 60% Cubs fans by my estimation. But
I think that's right. Yesterday was maybe 70%.
The Cubs are very good for business. It's also 3 of the 5 biggest crowds since the home opener were this weekend.
Really?
And as we're going to get into in a moment, tonight, which is Friday night, I'm expecting another possibly even bigger, massive crowd, both because the pitching matchup is exceptional and because Nelly is doing, not Nickel Nelly, our friend Nick Nelson, but Nelly, Country Grammar Nelly is doing a post-game concert. So I think, it's
Target Field is going to be the place to be tonight. I'm really excited about it. It's very cool that the Nelly night is lining up with probably the best pitching matchup we're going to see this year at Target Field.
Yes, we just need the weather to abide.
That is right.
Yes. Before we move on with some other stuff, we just wanted to mention one thing, new development with the podcast itself. As you guys watching on YouTube can see at the bottom of the screen, we have a Patreon podcast, which we do on Mondays and Wednesdays, commercial free, exclusive for Patreon subscribers. And for the first time ever now, we are able to offer not just monthly subscriptions, but 1-year subscriptions. And in honor of the trade deadline month and all this gossiping and speculation that we are loving to do every year around this time, if you sign up for or transfer your existing membership from monthly to yearly, we decided to give you 20% off, which is basically like you're getting, 2 free months, essentially.
2 plus months, yeah.
Yeah. So, if you're a longtime listener, it's just free money, basically. Like, you're just getting a little kickback, 20%. And if you've been on the fence, kind of like we expect the Twins to be at the trade deadline, if you've been on the fence about signing up, now you can sign up for a full year. You get the trade deadline, you get the stretch run, you get all the offseason stuff, you get ramping up in spring training, and you get the first half of next season, and you get 20% off.
Yeah, and would you essentially get the next 2.5 months off, which takes you to the end of the season.
Yeah, and so it's very easy to sign up. Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. If you're an existing member, you can go into your membership settings and I think just alter it from monthly to yearly and get the 20%. If you're a new member, just go through the normal sign up and it'll give you the choice of choosing either monthly or yearly. And then also, we just discovered this morning, because someone did it before we even announced it, you can also give year-long gift subscriptions to someone and get the 20% off the gift subscription too, which is great. So yeah, we just wanted to, this is the first time in 7 years of doing this that we're actually cleared from a technological standpoint of actually offering this.
Yeah.
And so we would love it if people, if you've been listening for a year anyway, you might as well get the 20% off.
Exactly right.
Okay, so we got a lot to talk about. I mean, we got I think a few notes on the Cubs, the Cubs series itself. Some interesting stuff from there that we want to get to. And then also some Joe Ryan stuff. Since last we talked, Joe Ryan has become an all-star on delay, but he's an all-star. And there's a kind of an interesting story behind that. And, of course, Byron Buxton.
Yes, also been one since we last talked.
Yes, not only become an all-star, but has committed to accepted an invite to the Home Run Derby, which is a cute story behind that, too, which we'll get to. But then, of course, the life of Byron Buxton is he does all that. He's on MLB Network. He's doing interviews. He's getting press, and he takes a 98-mile-an-hour fastball off the hand yesterday or 2 days ago and exits the game. So we'll have an update on that. Before that happens, though, let's talk about our first couple of sponsors here, including our presenting sponsor, Blackstack Brewing.
Blackstack Brewing, they're known for their beer. I just had another one. I had to make another recommendation because I went to Brixworth and they had a new IPA on there called Stacksman, I think, by Blackstack Brewing. They also have the Slopes French Pilsner, which is great. You can find Blackstack Brewing occasionally in some bars. Some of the better bars end up having them available, but and you can obviously also find them at the tap room. But the big change for them now is that you can find them in your local liquor store. It doesn't even have to be a specialty liquor store. You can now find Blackstack all over the state of Minnesota, from Grand Marais to Rochester, Winona to Fargo. They've got a brand new distributor that makes them easy to find in your own liquor store. You just have to go looking I would start with the 755 New England IPA. I think they're known especially for their IPAs, but I had a Slopes French Pilsner yesterday at Brixworth. Pull Tabs Pale Ale, or their Uncut Jams. That's their Strawberry Rhubarb Sour. You can find all of their great beers at your local liquor store, Blackstack Brewing. So stop by Blackstack Brewing near 94 and 280, or again, even easier, ask for them at your local liquor store.
Our second sponsor today will come in handy for people this weekend, and especially tonight, which is the Game Time app. And Game Time's specialty is hard to find tickets and last minute tickets. And I would say Ryan versus Skeens ahead of a Nelly concert on a Friday night, when the weather's been great, hopefully continues, is definitely both those boxes being checked. And then the next two games, Saturday and Sunday, against the Pirates. And then if you want to start to get some tickets for the second half coming out of the All-Star break too, the Game Time app is perfect for that. You can, John likes to use it. He stands up from whatever bar stool he's at pregame and on the walk towards Target Field, he punches up the Game Time app on his phone, gets the tickets he wants. They can sort of sort by the best value, both in terms of the cost, but also how good are these seats, because a lot of times people are just kind of buying them blind in that regard. So the Game Time app is great for that. It's great for also, not just sporting events, but concerts and shows and stuff too. You can basically get everything on it.
And the best part is that you can get $20 off your first purchase. Here's what. So if it's not a website, you got to go download an app. So you take the guesswork of buying tickets with Game Time. You download the Game Time app, and then when you create an account and use the code Gleeman to create that account, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code GLEEMAN, Gleeman, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Okay. Let's a few things from the Cubs series. So we had talked on the last show, Patreon probably, about the botched double steal with Larnach, Castro going from third to home.
I'm glad you're starting with this. I really wanted to talk about this stupid minutia.
That's my middle name. Aaron Stupid Minutia Gleeman. It failed in part because this was against the Rays.
It was the Rays. I think it was the 4th of July game versus the Rays. Okay. I think it was the Friday game.
So you have Larnach on first. You have Castro on third. The Twins were intending to have Larnach make a run for second, draw a throw that would then allow Castro to score. The problem was he got thrown out stealing second. before Castro could cross the plate, which ended the inning because there was 2 outs.
Right.
And
should we explain that rule to people who were more casual baseball fans?
If it's a force out at second, then it doesn't matter when the run scores or doesn't score because it invalidates anybody crossing the plate. However, if it's not a force out, which that would not have been a force out, he wasn't forced to go to second base. Right. Then if the runner doesn't cross the plate before the out is made, it's invalidated. Right. But if the runner crosses the plate a split second before the out is made, then the run counts. And that's kind of the whole basis, that rule, behind the attempted double steal, because what you're trying to do, in Trevor Larnach's mind, apparently, what you were trying to do is just steal second base. But what they really wanted to do, and we saw evidence of this being the actual plan, because Wallner and Royce Lewis, Wallner in the Larnach role and Royce Lewis in the Willie Castro role at third base, did the identical play against the Cubs, and we saw Wallner do a much different thing, which is he basically surrendered, kind of pulled up halfway to second base once he drew the throw. So the throw goes from the catcher to second base, and instead of doing what Larnach did and trying to slide into second base and be safe, which got him tagged out and invalidated whatever Castro was going to do, Wallner just sort of stopped and like peeled back a little bit. Right. And his goal was to then draw, I guess it would have been the shortstop at that point, probably, draw the shortstop towards him, because that shortstop then wants to go tag him out. And while that's all happening, Royce Lewis makes a mad dash for the plate, which is precisely what happened.
Yeah, he wants to get caught in a rundown. He wants to get, he's sacrificing himself, but he wants it to take long enough for Royce Lewis to cross home plate.
Yes,
and it doesn't be enough of a distraction so that they don't throw to home plate. So
yeah, I mean, drawing the throw is key to begin with.
Right.
Some teams won't throw through there because they're so afraid of the run scoring. We've seen the Twins do that. Yep. Some teams will try to cut the throw. That used to be a little league play I remember we used to do, where another infielder comes like running in to intercept the throw and throw home. But yeah, it doesn't take that much. You basically have to make the infielder then make one throw or run towards you, at which point the guy on third is halfway there to begin with and he can score. First of all, I think it's a good sign that they did that play with Royce Lewis, of all runners.
Yeah, I thought so too.
On third base. I thought actually during this entire series against the Cubs, he ran hard and he ran well, and both Baldelli and Lewis basically said he's gonna run. Like I think Lewis kind of hated being asked to jog, and it's not even 100% clear to me that helps him stay healthy anyway.
No,
and so I'm not saying you got to sprint down the line on every ground ball, but we saw him go first to third, him score, and certainly if you're sending him
an infield single yesterday,
and if you're sending him from third as the second part of a double steal, you have confidence not only that he still can move a little bit, which he can, but I mean they're not trying to do that if they think he's going to blow his hamstring again.
Yes,
so now we'll see if they're right on that. But so Wallner did what is called surrendering in that spot, like from a strategic standpoint, and it worked perfectly. They scored an extra run.
Went up from 3-2 to 4-2, got an insurance run in the bottom of the fourth. Not real late in the game, but they got the insurance run they needed to get. And I did look up what the win expectancy chart is for runners on first and third with 2 outs. And the run expectancy is you're going to score half of a run. Right. So about every other inning that run scores. It doesn't, not necessarily. And if you get that run across by sacrificing yourself, it's an interesting take on sort of the sabermetric thought process that you don't trade outs for a base, right? Because you don't bunt to move from somebody from first to second. You don't necessarily bunt to move guys from second to third.
Yeah, but this wasn't for a base. It was
you're right. Well, it is a base because it's from third to home. But it's an especially important base to take.
Well, and along those lines, the reason there's so little bunting in baseball is because statistically it's been proven to not be a particularly good play, and people who are into sabermetrics analytics we know that, and that's why bunts have kind of fallen out of fashion. But I don't think there's a group of people in the world who like a squeeze play more than stat heads, at least in my experience.
Yes.
Because it's a completely different calculus there. Like you're going for the run, not the base. You're going for what you think will be the guarantee of a run. And to your point, you're using the run expectancy table, which is taking the average outcome. So in other words, in the thousands of times a season across baseball, there's a situation identical to that where there's a runner on first, a runner on third, and 2 outs in an inning. On average, that inning, that half inning, from that point forward, will score 0.5 runs. However, that includes innings where you score 5 runs.
Right.
And it also includes innings where you get shut out. And so your average expectancy is half a run. So obviously going for 1 run there is doubling your expectancy. However, it's a completely different math where if you're viewing that run itself as more essential than most because it takes you from a 1-run lead to a 2-run lead in the middle or the late innings of a game, it's not 50-50 to score a run in that situation. It's much less than 50-50 to score a run. And so it's basically the guy at the plate's on base percentage, first of all.
Right. Yes.
And so in that sense, average and sort of how often you score at least 1 run are 2 different ways to look at that. And so they were giving up a chance for a bigger inning, to hit a 3-run homer or whatever, because you're making the last out, you're ending the threat after that, but they're greatly increasing, if executed correctly, which it was, your chances of scoring 1 run precisely, not 2, not 5, not 0, 1. And they felt doubling the lead basically was essential. I think you can, argue the efficacy of that, but it goes back to something we've talked about maybe the last 10 days or so, which is Baldelli is clearly, not pedal to the metal, but he's getting, by his standards at least, much more aggressive in several very noticeable ways. One of which is running a double steal of home twice in the span of 1 homestand. The others, you saw the squeeze bunt from from Brooks Lee that won the game. That was in its own way very aggressive. You've seen him push Varlin and Duran a second full inning, which he doesn't often do. And I think, in my view, in its own way, removing, Woods Richardson, removing Festa, rather than trying to, with, a slim lead or a close game, instead of asking them to get through a lineup, the core of a lineup a 3rd time, and aggressively going to your bullpen, is, I think, trying to grab hold of that game and basically take control and win it, as opposed to just kind of letting it play out. And you can debate which option is better, leave your starter and go to the relievers. We actually had a long discussion about that on the last Patreon episode where I was mean to John. Although not by my stand. I mean, it was like a
no, nothing.
4-hour chat, really. But I think in its own way, that's aggressive too.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Or even pinch hitting for Larnach for Bader, which he did in the last game of the race thing. We talked about that a lot on the Patreon on Monday or Tuesday. So,
and speaking of aggressive, by the way, you tweeted a couple things about this, but we should give some props to Tommy Watkins, the third base coach, whose job essentially only gets criticism for 2 very aggressive and maybe in the moment,
foolhardy
sends, one of Larnach and one of Jeffers, both of whom scored, neither of whom are the fleetest of foot, but they both had some nifty creative slides and scored runs there, where that is what happened. That is the good side of an aggressive third base coach sending. The bad side is what gets more attention, which is you get dead ducks at the plate and all that. But again, I think that maybe goes towards aggression. It wouldn't shock me at all if Watkins was doing that in part because the coaching staff as a whole has decided to get a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more aggressive in some of these spots. So
I would suggest that Rocco is managing a lot more like we've seen him generally manage in, say, October and September and August than he has earlier in the season. We've seen this from Rocco in previous years, where he's a little bit more, let's wait back and see what happens here in April, May, June, July. But then when pedal comes in the middle, okay, now we're in a pennant race. I'm going to get a little bit more aggressive. I'm going to, maybe keep my pitchers in a little less long. I'm going to pinch hit a little bit more. I think just the nature of this season, the, incredible, the poor start and the, slump that they had in June and the pitching problems they've been dealing with, he's just gotten to the point where I feel like he's a little more hands-on and he's managing a lot more like it's a pennant race or a postseason, because, right now they're on the edge. They need that. They need every little edge they can get to try and
they don't have wins to spare at this point. And beyond that, the lineup has been so inconsistent and just not good for most of the season, that you're playing a lot of tight games. And when the pitching staff isn't just, put Joe Ryan or Pablo out there and set it and forget it for 7 innings, you gotta maneuver some things, and pushing an extra run across can have a big impact because you're not hitting your way to those runs. You're not having big innings offensively. And from a pitching standpoint, if it's a 2-0 game, and yes, I mean, Woods Richardson was looking good, but do you really want him facing Kyle Tucker and Pete Crow Armstrong and Michael Busch, 3 great left-handed hitters, a third time through the lineup, where if you put one guy on, then the tying runs at the plate? Like, I think those are, I'm not saying they're good or bad. We discussed that more on the Patreon last time, right? The morning after the Woods Richardson decision. Right. But I do think it's in its own way aggressive in that it's trying to take control of a game and sort of dictate its terms, rather than letting it like play out and go more naturally with it.
I mean, I'll add this too. With this bullpen, as strong as it can be at the top and as weak as it can be at the bottom, it's a lot. Going into the 6th inning with a 1-run lead is significantly different than going into the 6th inning with a 1-run deficit. I mean, that's true in most baseball games, I think, but I think it's especially true when you've got a bullpen that you really trust with, 4 high leverage arms, or maybe even 5 high leverage arms that you can plot out there. It matters. Those early runs, that small lead that you might get in the middle innings, makes a difference in terms of this team's win probability.
Yeah, and then they just need Simeon Woods Richardson to keep pitching like this, whether it's for 5 innings, 6 innings, whatever, and they need the kind of alternating good, bad David Festa to get on a good run here, and he's certainly shown signs of being able to do it. I remain a believer, but he needs now. He had a solid 5 1/3, 2 runs allowed against a very, very good Cubs lineup, and now the test is don't go out and give 7 up in 2 2/3 next time out. I guess coming out of the break. Simeon starts, I think, Sunday.
I think that's the way it would line up. Yeah.
Yeah. So
do we know what they're doing on Saturday yet?
I think it's going to be one of those Travis Adams opener / bullpen games, basically. Right. But I'm not certain of that. There had been some talk, and I think I mentioned this briefly on the last Patreon or something, of Zabby Matthews, who's been throwing live BPs, of him kind of bypassing a traditional rehab assignment to build back his pitch count and just rejoining the Twins and sort of operating in that opener or 2 or 3, inning role, making a couple of, appearances like that, throwing 50 or 60 pitches as his way to kind of build back towards a normal 5-inning thing, maybe in the second half. That's risky. That's kind of, I got why that became a discussion, because the alternative is Travis Adams and a bullpen game, because Pablo's out, Bailey Ober's out. Some of your prospects, Andrew Morris is injured, and Zebby himself obviously is out of the mix. So I get why they were discussing that. It sounds like that's not going to be in the cards for this weekend, but I certainly think Zebby is very, very close to returning, or at the very least to going on a rehab assignment, which might only be 1 start. So I would expect him, coming out of the break, if not immediately, then, maybe 1 or 2 turns, he joins the rotation, which he's not a guarantee either. I mean, he has his own inconsistencies, and he's essentially a rookie just like Festa, but they need that. I mean, he just has a lot more upside than someone like Travis Adams. But yeah, I think because we'll talk about this in a second, and we can talk about it now, I guess, they moved up Joe Ryan from Saturday to Friday. And the Pirates also moved up Paul Skeens to Friday.
Yep.
For the same reason, basically, which we'll get into a second, which creates a great matchup in front of the concert tonight, but it also pushes back, and they used Monday's off day to do that. So Joe Ryan is still on normal rest, and he's still facing the same team, the Pirates, that he would have faced either day. But what it does is push back the kind of blank spot from Friday to Saturday. And I kind of like that, because theoretically, Joe Ryan is the most likely to go 6 or 7 innings and not have to deploy your entire bullpen in the Joe Ryan start, which means you should be pretty all hands on deck capable for Saturday, might be an opener followed by 3 or 4 innings from Travis Adams, followed by, we'll see what happens after that with the bullpen. So I think that kind of fits pretty well. But yeah, that seems to be the plan. And then I think Simeon Woods Richardson on Sunday, that, subject to change, as they like to say. Before we talk about the Ryan thing, because I think there's an interesting subplot there, let's just talk about it. Since we last did the show, Byron Buxton's also been named an All-Star too. He got named directly to the reserves by player vote, I think, and then later accepted the invite to the Home Run Derby. And a couple things on this. One, that's all in question now to some extent because of the hit by pitch. He took 97.7 from Cade Horton off the hand. Yeah. And he has a little hand protector thing that he wears, but it didn't hit it flush.
I think you can actually see it right here.
Yeah. It might have lessened the blow a little bit, which maybe is what saved him from having a fractured wrist or whatever, but it didn't quite hit it flush. And I can tell you, I saw Byron Buxton's hand up close and personal, and it was very swollen. And he was in a lot of pain. The funny thing, Buxton being Buxton, is he initially stayed in the game, stole second base with a head first slide, and then came around to score a run, the first run of the game. And then, as often happens with the Twins, once the guy gets back to the dugout, they take a little.
Because I think he also went back out in the field too. He played center field after that as well, and then it was when he came around to.
But it was tough because I saw his hand hours later. And I saw his hand the next day even, and you could definitely tell something happened to that hand. Right. But he went for x-rays. Those are negative. I think the overall vibe from Buxton, from Baldelli, from just overall folks over there is we avoided something catastrophic here. Right. But he's still got a deep bruise of a hand and it's swollen, and we'll see. It's a little strange because if you're not able to play, at least let's say Sunday, if you're not able to play one of these games this weekend, it becomes a kind of a tough sell, just emotionally, to be like, yeah, I know I just missed the last 3 games, but I'm going to play in the All-Star game, and before that I'm going to do the Home Run Derby. And I wouldn't blame him for doing that, but it's kind of a weird look. So I think we're going to learn a lot about that maybe tonight or tomorrow if Buxton is either back in the lineup, in which case that tells itself, or is available to pinch run or pinch, come in defensively or maybe even bat. And the other thing we're going to learn is he rarely takes on-field batting practice. He takes most of his swings in the cage underneath in the clubhouse or next to the clubhouse.
I was wondering about this.
But the Home Run Derby is essentially on-field batting practice. And so he's been practicing with his chosen pitcher, Tommy Watkins. And the reason he chose Tommy Watkins, first of all, Tommy Watkins is just beloved in that clubhouse. But
sure,
he was on the low A coaching staff and maybe high A coaching staff, whichever, A ball coaching staff in 2013 when Byron Buxton was beginning his minor league ascent. And they formed a strong bond. And they've basically been together now for I don't know how many years in a row. So they give you the choice of who do you want to throw to you. And guys have chosen their dads, I know, in the past. Yeah. And he chose Tommy Watkins, but Tommy Watkins doesn't always throw BP and definitely doesn't always throw it to Byron Buxton on the field. Right. So they've been practicing. So that's going to be a tell too. Like pregame, when the media is there so early, if you see Byron Buxton taking BP off Tommy Watkins one of these next couple of 2-3 days, they're still planning to play in that Home Run Derby or participate in that Home Run Derby, which obviously I would like to see. It would really stink if he comes back from back-to-back years of knee surgeries and all these questions, short-term and long-term, about his health and his ability to stay on the field and all that, and has a brilliant first half where he was essentially totally healthy other than a concussion, which you're not going to be able to do anything about. And he came back a week and a half after the concussion. He's clearly been the best center fielder of the American League. He leads them in OPS, WAR, homers, runs scored, RBIs, whatever the position. He didn't get voted in, but he's deserving. And also going back home to Georgia where his friends and family are. And then the added thing is the reason he agreed to participate in the Home Run Derby is that his son, he has 3 sons, his oldest son, Brixton, he told us that he loves to play MLB The Show, the video game. Right. Yep. He plays Home Run Derby on there, like obsessively. And he's told him in years past, Dad, you got to get in the Home Run Derby so I can be on the field and I can be one of those kids who brings their dad a towel and a Gatorade in between swings. Right. Yeah. And Buxton's like, that's all he wants to do. He wants to bring me out a towel between swings of the Home Run Derby. And he was saying, how a little thing like that can be so big. back home in Georgia. I'm sure he'll have a million friends and family there, including his 3 boys and his wife. So it would suck. It would be understandable. You hit me in the hand with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, I'm going to retire from life.
Sure.
But it would stink if that, after all this and his history of injuries and all that, he's playing at the top of his game, healthy, if that flukish thing keeps him out of it. But I do think as we sit here on Friday before the game, hours before the game, there's a level of optimism, I think, that he'll be mostly okay for that. But that's easy for me to say because it's not my hand. Mangled.
I mean, the truth is, how swollen that hand is, he probably doesn't have a lot of control over, and I think that's going to be the ultimate decision point as to whether or not he's able to participate or not. So,
before we talk about the Joe Ryan All-Star aspect, let's go to our next couple of sponsors, including. I think we have a video here to show you.
We do. We've got there's a new podcast called The Midnight Library of Baseball. Actually, I don't think it's new, but we're just going to play a little video from them to talk a little bit about where they tell you a little bit about their podcast. Here we go.
Some stories are etched in baseball's history. But what if we've been telling them all wrong? How did a Hollywood producer find his father while casting Field of Dreams? What was Shoeless Joe's greatest deception? And how did a simple game of catch, played for 1,000 days straight, lead to a cultural phenomenon? If you love baseball, but love the stories behind it even more, check out Midnight Library of Baseball, available on most platforms.
Look at that. Multimedia. So yes, if you like baseball podcasts, go ahead and check out their baseball podcast.
And you probably do because you're listening to it. Well, it's also just our last sponsor is Harry's Razors. Harry's Razors has been with us for 14 years, and that's because about 15 years ago, or 20 years ago maybe, they came up with basically a brand new business model for selling razors. Turns out that the previous business model, which had basically been, add another razor to your razor over and over and over again. So you have to get people to buy new razors about every 5 years. That kind of ran out of gas after you get to about the 5th razor. And the razor companies didn't want to actually take the next step, which is like, why don't we get rid of the middleman and save everybody some money? Shockingly, they didn't want to embrace that new business model, but Harry's did. And as a result of that, they've been one of our sponsors now for 15 years. You get a German engineered blades, you get customized delivery options. The refills are as low as $2. They're fantastic razors. You don't have to worry about going to the store. You don't have to worry about getting anything unlocked. You just get razors delivered to you. So
yes, they have a special trial set that you can get for $8, and they'll throw in a free gift if you go to harrys.com/Gleeman. Here's what you get in the trial set. You get a 5-blade razor with a weighted handle. They'll give you foaming shave gel and a travel cover. That's all for $8, and they'll toss in a free gift. That's Harry's, HARRYS, harrys.com/Gleeman. That's our exclusive link for Gleeman and Geek listeners. So harrys.com/Gleeman for an $8 trial set and the free gift. And John, this is a little tech talk, buddy, but you're going to want to hit the button that actually puts the graphics back up.
Oh, that's right. There we go.
There we go. We're still learning, folks. In terms of getting more presentable on TV, we're definitely more handsome than we were a few years ago. So that's
for
good
sure.
For video.
Yeah. We age like fine wine, Mr. Gleeman. We just get better and better looking. Yeah.
Get sour and need to be thrown away. That's for sure. Okay, so we mentioned the Joe Ryan also joining Byron Buxton, which actually Ryan made a big deal of that, like how cool it's going to be to go there with Buxton as your teammate and friend, and be around his family and friends in Georgia, and how special that's going to be. But Joe Ryan had a very deserving all-star caliber first half, clearly. 2.75 ERA, great strikeout to walk ratio, one of the lowest opponents' batting averages in the league, threw 105 innings, super consistent in a rotation that kind of crumbled around him. Went 5 innings in all 18 of his outings, usually 6+, allowed 0 1 run 10 times, just the model of upper echelon starting pitching consistently.
Yeah.
And he was basically in the top 10 of almost any category among AL starters. Now, the problem is only 9 starting pitchers got chosen for the American League team.
Right.
And 3 of those, including Shane Smith for the White Sox, who clearly isn't a deserving all-star, and maybe 1 or 2 other guys, were to check the box, the prerequisite for every team, which is every team needs to be represented. So that left 6 actual kind of choices for starting pitchers on the American League team. And as you go through those names, it's, Tarek Skubal and Hunter Brown and Garrett Crochet. I mean, there's a lot of as good as Joe Ryan is, these guys are as good or better and had great first halves. It was a snub in the sense that he was deserving.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was a snub in the sense that you can point to someone, maybe Brian Wu of the Mariners, who had very similar numbers but gets to pitch in a much more pitcher-friendly ballpark. You could maybe say Ryan was a half step better than him, but even that,
Right.
I don't think it's egregious. And so it's kind of a numbers game, and the one per team took away 2 or 3 spots there that would have gone to Ryan probably. But again, the Twins have been on the other end of that during my childhood, certainly, where they would send Ron Coomer or whoever, who was at the ballpark. I saw him yesterday, by the way.
I suppose he was. Yeah, he's
Cubs radio.
Yeah.
I think he made it twice with that rule. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, Ryan was definitely disappointed. Not only because he felt, like I just described, that he was certainly deserving of making an all-star team for his first half this year, but also because he felt like this is basically the 3rd year in his career already, essentially out of 4 seasons, that he's had an all-star caliber first half and been passed over. And so, he was frustrated. He didn't make like some massive case out of it, but he was like, I just don't know what I have to do at this point. But as we've talked about at the time, going back two episodes ago, and just as a general rule over the years, we always kind of tell people to relax when the initial rosters come out.
Give it a couple days, right?
Right. There are so many replacements inevitably named because guys get injured, which there's been a handful of legitimate injuries. Guys have dropped out and get replaced.
Sure.
Pitchers who are going to pitch the weekend before the game,
Sunday especially,
particularly
right?
Sunday, are ineligible then to participate in the game itself. And both the AL and the NL got to have somebody cover 9 innings or maybe more.
Right.
And so they need guys who are actually available and cleared by their teams to pitch at least 1 inning. And so the guys like Hunter Brown, who are pitching the first half finale for the Houston Astros, he gets replaced not because he's injured, but because he won't be available for the All-Star game. And then you also have guys who just don't care. They make up some injury and they don't participate. Every year there are at least like 5 to 10 on each side that get added, and that's been happening this year too. And so we always kind of say, don't get too up in arms, particularly in a case like Joe Ryan, where he definitely appeared to be, if not the biggest pitching snub, one of the most obvious pitching snubs. And so sure enough, Hunter Brown drops out in terms of eligibility to pitch because he's going Sunday for the Astros, and Major League Baseball needs a starting pitcher to replace him. And the tricky part was that initially Joe Ryan was scheduled to start Saturday for the Twins.
Right.
And there's no hard and fast rule. I asked around about this from MLB. So if you pitch Sunday, you're not able to pitch in the All-Star game.
Right.
But if you pitch Saturday, it's more of a gray area. It's become sort of the rule, but it's not actually like set in stone as a rule because the game's on Tuesday. If you pitch Saturday, your normal bullpen session between starts where you might throw 30 or 40 pitches, at 75% speed, basically, could have fallen on the Tuesday anyway. Right. But a lot of teams, and I think the Twins would be in this camp too, just would prefer not to mess with their starting pitcher.
Bullpen is a lot more controlled even than the All-Star game. Like you don't want to be pulling a guy because he's overgone his pitch limit in the 4th inning of the All-Star.
And let's be honest, guys are hyped up to be in the All-Star game. Right. And guys are going to try to throw harder than they normally throw. Yes. Guys are going to try to blow away, Shohei Ohtani. And do you need that 2 days after you threw 100 pitches in a start? Probably not. So, but here's where it got kind of interesting. The Twins recognized that Joe Ryan's chances, whether directly or just sort of, common knowledge, to be named a replacement were going to be hindered by him starting Saturday. And they also knew that Monday's off day, this past Monday, created a scenario where he could pitch Friday on normal rest anyway.
Right. He was starting Saturday not because that was where his, he was getting an extra day of rest to go Saturday because they had an extra off day.
Which they would prefer to do that. I mean, for a veteran pitcher, especially one who's already surpassed 100 innings and hasn't been the most durable in the second halves past years, they would love to give him an extra day or an extra 2 days whenever possible. But when the All-Star component was folded in here, the Twins kind of said, we can just have him start on regular rest against the same team. We can then piece together Saturday like we talked about with Travis Adams or the bullpen or whatever, and maybe that makes that a slightly more favorable situation than it would have been on Friday anyway. And we can then clear the path for MLB to view Joe Ryan's candidacy on its own merit as opposed to having another factor. And what became clear, talking to some people about this, Rocco Baldelli definitely played a part in this. Rocco Baldelli just in making the decision to move him up a day, which I think runs a little bit counter to how they would like to, just all things being equal, handle the pitcher. But also I think Baldelli, whether directly or indirectly, kind of getting word to the league, like if this could clear the path for Ryan, we're willing to do this, essentially. And that's what happened. And I know Ryan, once he was named a couple days ago, was very happy. He's a little like me, where he's going to keep that chip on his shoulder that he wasn't initially picked forever.
Right. Yeah.
But you could see almost like a sense of relief, like, okay, I'm not nuts. I was actually deserving. I am doing what it takes to get on the All-Star team, like all that sort of thing. And this now opens up the possibility. Hopefully he pitches well tonight against the Pirates. Hopefully he gets into the All-Star game and, strikes out the side or whatever it is, or even if he doesn't get in, that's fine too. And I think it's one of those moves where it checks a lot of good boxes. It checks a box that means a lot to the player, clearly. It checks a box that it just honors a player who was beyond deserving to be on the team. And then from Baldelli's standpoint, you're doing a solid.
Right. And
you're pulling whatever strings you can and using whatever, I say he's like the campaign manager instead of the baseball manager at this point, to reward one of your best, most reliably, consistently strong players. And I think all those things are good things. And I think just in general, Joe Ryan being on the All-Star team is a very good thing for him. And it's nice for the Twins too. This is now the 6th consecutive All-Star game where they've had at least 2 participants, which
I'm looking forward to watching him. I'm also looking forward to watching him versus Skeens. And basically the same thing happened to Skeens. Right? Skeens he was already on the All-Star thing, but why not just make sure that he can, he also pitched on Sunday. So
here's what I think it did with Skeens. So Skeens was just voted in. Skeens started, I think, the All-Star game last year. He's got a sub-2 ERA. I mean, he's a phenom. He's one of the best young pitchers you're ever going to see. He has a horrible record because the Pirates' offense is horrendous. But I mean, he's one of the best. What moving up Skeens did, they moved him up to Friday. The exact same basically mentality. It didn't make it so that he would make the All-Star team because he was already on the All-Star team. It made it so he might be able to start the All-Star game for a second consecutive season, or at the very least come in second or third inning and put on a show. And it also, as someone who's going to be at tonight's game no matter what, whether it was Travis Adams versus Michael Burrow or it was Skeens versus Joe Ryan, I'll take Skeens Ryan as the opening act for Nelly on what is hopefully a very entertaining night at the ballpark. So I think that creates as a little domino effect, a little added bonus, I think that creates a very fun environment, hopefully at Target Field for tonight.
You talked about Skeens' record. Skeens is 4-7. And I did look it up. He's given up 1 run or fewer in 11 starts this year.
Yeah, it's crazy. And he has 4 wins. It's insane.
And these are not 5-inning starts either, by the way. Like these are 7-inning starts, etc. So.
I mean, he's lost multiple games, either 1-0 or 2-0.
Right.
I mean, he's such a prime example of, first of all, the lack of information you can often get from a pitcher's win-loss record, but then it's such a clear example of the factors that are beyond his control, which is he plays for a bad team with a terrible offense. So of course they don't score many runs, and he gives up a run and loses and all that stuff. But it should be fun. Skeens versus Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan was unaware that Skeens had been moved up
Oh,
so
really?
We did a little scrum when they announced Joe Ryan had made it, and we were talking, and somebody said, "Are you looking forward to Friday versus Skeens?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm pitching against Skeens." And this, by the way, goes back to the unimportance of win-loss record for pitchers. You might say, "Oh man, well, I'm probably going to take the loss there because Skeens is great," but in his mind, it's like, "Yeah, that's going to be fun."
Yeah, of course.
Let's just try to both put on a show. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it works out perfect. I think Baldelli did a good thing to push for his candidacy and make a slight alteration. And I think it's appreciated by Joe Ryan. Hopefully it's appreciated by fans, and hopefully as a little, I don't know, extra bonus, we see a great pitchers duel in front of Nelly's performance.
Let's just hope the weather holds on.
Yeah, I won't jinx it. It's slightly, It looks slightly less bad than it did like a day or two ago. So.
If I had a weather prayer candle, I'd be burning that as well. So
yeah, I had
a Nelly prayer candle.
I had a Twins official who's involved kind of behind the scenes. We were talking about this, and he goes, "If it rains tomorrow." I mean, come on! Like, this is their big. I mean, I won't be. Right. They're going to get. They should get 35,000 or something again.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Hopefully. Okay, so we got a few other things to hit here before we close our camera, and I can go take a nap. Luke Keaschall, let's talk a little bit about. So we talked a little bit about Zebby Matthews a moment ago, but Zebby Matthews has been throwing live batting practice as a way he's coming back from a shoulder strain. Luke Keaschall has been taking live batting practice as he nears his recovery. Everybody, if you're not on YouTube, you don't see Luke Keaschall's luscious locks, his hair. Which honestly, I don't.
Well, I'm glad that
don't put that up next to us. He has more hair than both.
We're going to get this out of here.
Yeah,
get that picture out of there.
Yeah, don't do that. Luke Keaschall's been taking live BP too. A couple days ago, they faced each other in live BP. We talked about this on the Patreon, but the short version is Zebby threw a couple times inside to Luke Keaschall, who's coming back from a broken forearm that happened on a hit by pitch. And people are like, "Oh no, Zebby, don't do that. Like, you're going to freak him out. You're going to hurt him again." And afterwards, Zebby said, "Oh, I know. He was begging me to throw him inside." He said, "You got to throw me inside. I need practice. I need to get used to it." And so now it sounds like Zebby's going to throw a little bit more live BP and then probably either during the break or shortly after the break go on more of a traditional rehab, which is probably going to be one start, let's say. With Keaschall, he's checked most of the boxes, but his injury is a much more significant injury. I mean, it's a broken forearm. He's already missed 2.5 months basically at this point. And so it was good to see him take swings. He's been running, he's been fielding, he's been doing all sorts of stuff. In talking to him, he's in a good mood. He's in a good place. He feels good, but he also has to kind of, from a conditioning standpoint, he's got to see more pitching. He's got to see game action. He's got to see reps. He's got to take swings, all that stuff. They're sending him, I think he left after yesterday's game and headed to Fort Myers, where the Twins have both their rookie ball team, their low A team, and their spring training year-round complex. Right. And so sometimes it can be not that revealing in terms of information when they say we're sending someone to Fort Myers. Well, that could mean almost anything. That could, But with him, I think it sounds like the plan is, at least as of yesterday, he's going to go to Fort Myers. He's going to take a few more days of live batting practice against pitchers down there, sort of extended spring training type of vibes. And then he's going to start a traditional rehab assignment. And it wouldn't surprise me if it begins with Fort Myers' single A team. Because that's the same environment. The weather's going to be warm there. You can kind of keep tabs on him. Then at some point, I'm going to guess he gets bumped up to AAA, which he's only played like 3 weeks at AAA in his life because he was called up pretty quickly after debuting at AAA. So the big picture thing is, I would say Luke Keaschall is getting much, much closer to being activated from the IL, but he's not quite there yet in terms of beginning a rehab assignment and then being able to kind of count down the at-bats or the games till he joins the Twins. But I mean, you can just do the math on it, sort of. Like, I would say shortly after the All-Star break is a realistic, rejoining the Twins active roster. And my assumption is at this point that he would be activated and rejoin the lineup as opposed to be activated and be optioned to AAA. I mean, the truth is he only played 7 games, and he was called up initially because Correa was out and Castro was out and Lewis was out, I think, and their infield was just depleted to the point they just needed somebody. So it's possible now that, mostly those guys are healthy, that they activate him from the IL and send him to AAA, but also let's be real. Yeah. we need to see Luke Keaschall in the majors if he's healthy at this point. I think.
Agreed. I mean, they absolutely could use his bat and his aggressiveness and his base running. We spent the first part of this podcast talking about that. It's a little bit unfortunate that just as he's about to come back and just about as looks like he's about ready to take some swings and be in some games, we've got a 4-day All-Star break across the majors and the minors, such that we probably won't see him in a game until
right, which is
shortly after the All-Star game. So.
Which I think is partly why he's doing basically extended spring training, because they got pitchers down there that can throw to him for sure. I mean, you see that kind of often with rehabbing guys. If they're worried actual games are going to get rained out, or if the team's off, or a team's on the road and they don't want to send him on the road, like just go to Fort Myers. There's a couple dozen pitchers there that can throw to you. And it's more of a kind of a controlled environment. But yes, the news generally speaking on Luke Keaschall is very promising. And this could be an example of coming out of the break. Hopefully he's pretty much ready. You activate him. They certainly have room for him in terms of if he's anywhere near as good as we think he's going to be. Yeah. And leading into the trade deadline, if you were to trade a Willie Castro, let's say, or even a Harrison Bader, that creates some at-bats that could very easily be absorbed by a top 100 prospect.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. Again, counter to the point I was making, which is there's not a lot of margin for error in terms of trading away some of those, potential, future free agents or impending free agents. Keaschall might provide a little bit of extra cushion for making that sort of decision.
Although, I mean, look, the Twins haven't hit all season. They got room for anybody who can hit.
That's true. You're right.
We're not in a spot ever really with this team since the middle of last season, at least, where it's like, what are they going to do with all these good hitters? They just can't play all these good hitters. I mean, come on. Yeah. I know you were at the games, so you didn't necessarily watch this, but I wanted to talk real briefly about the players only broadcast that they did over the weekend for all 3 games. So Corey Provis, I think, had a series off. And the play-by-play guy. So instead of bringing in a different play-by-play person, they decided, let's try something new. And let's have the 3 primary analysts, or 3 of the primary analysts, which is Justin Morneau, Glenn Perkins, and Trevor Plouffe. Let's throw those 3 in a booth and have them operate without a traditional play-by-play man sort of playing air traffic controller there. And first game, they were joined mid-game and basically for most of the game by Pablo Lopez,
right?
Who I would have bet your house on people loving Pablo Lopez in the booth, and I would have won easily.
Yes, right. Yeah,
because I don't think you could talk to Pablo Lopez about any subject, and not come away impressed with not only how just smart he is, but how funny and interesting and able to sort of go with the punches he is. Yep. And we saw that. I mean, I listened. I don't normally watch the broadcast because I'm in the press box, but for this, I had headphones on and other people were doing that too. And he was awesome. And he stayed much longer because they were just having such a good rapport and a good time. And I know he enjoyed it too. I will be surprised, hopefully long time from now when he retires as a player. I'll be shocked if he doesn't go into broadcasting because he's just a natural at it. Because he's smart, but he's also able to articulate a smart person's thoughts in easily digestible ways.
Yeah. And in a non-native language, by the way.
Yes, which is completely
right.
I mean, I can't, as you're listening to right now, I can't do that in my native language. It's my primary language. And he's also he's a very serious person in that he's extremely hardworking and dedicated and all that, but he's also a little bit of a goofball. Right. And that he has a very good sense of humor and he's self-deprecating. So I just thought he was such a perfect fit. And that, however long he was in the booth, it was quite a few innings, was just, to me, A+ television. And, did they update the count as much as you wanted? Did they talk about the actual every play? No. And they're not trying to do this for 162. But for one night or 3 games out of 6 months, to use the game as sort of the background to provide topics to discuss for 4 really smart, 3 of them recently retired and 1 active players, I thought it was awesome. I mean, I thought it had a little bit of like a podcast vibe where they were just like, hey, there's an interesting play. Let me tell you a story about this, or what do you think about that? And then
this is the upside of the Twins having their own broadcast, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is for all of the pain that they that had to go through getting this thing going, all the logistical pain that had to be happening to get them on the cable channels and to deal with everything else. The one thing they can do now is they've got a level of control that is above and beyond that which they would have had on when they are farming it out to a not large regional sports network.
Right.
We've seen it a little bit with some of the new camera views that they've got. We've seen it a little bit with inside Twins features instead of advertising in between some innings. But this is another great example of we can just try something completely differently. We can try a manning on manning Monday Night Football thing. Only we're going to have 3 of our Twins analysts talk about it. We're going to pull it. And by the way, Lopez isn't doing anything today. Like, let's pull him in there as well. Like, that is not the sort of thing that you would see if you don't control your own broadcast. And it takes some guts. To try something like that.
Well,
you don't know how it's going to go.
I saw, these last few days behind the scenes, how much work it took from like a production side, all the people that you don't see on camera of, they pre-taped all these they had Trevor Plouffe hitting off the pitching machine. They had Justin Morneau giving a tour of the clubhouse, which was a lot of the areas we kind of tried to describe on the show, which I liked. They had all these, and also they had Trevor Plouffe playing a ball boy down the left field line, which they had to set up camera shots for and all that. They talked to, they brought Terry Ryan into the booth yesterday. Lopez, obviously, we talked about. They interviewed Joe Ryan mid-game from they just added so many elements. And as you're seeing on YouTube for us, every element you add, it greatly increases the percent chance of something going haywire.
That bonus is going to mess it up.
Yeah. And Aaron's going to yell like he always does. But so I was, I'm sure it wasn't perfect. I know, but I was just really impressed, not only with the conversational element of the broadcast itself, but the kind of extra kind of pre-tape stuff that they worked on behind the scenes before the games, which I saw them in the clubhouse taping a lot of this stuff. I thought all the interviews were good. It was great to see Terry Ryan at the ballpark. I'm always shocked that he remembers you and I. He's very friendly as always. And he brought a completely different vibe than Lopez. Right. Not that Terry Ryan doesn't have a sense of humor, but he's very, buttoned up. And they had great discussions. He's the guy who brought all those guys to the Twins. Right. And scouted them when they were teenagers. And I thought that discussion, they were going over their old scouting reports and that sort of thing and telling stories about that when they were drafted. I thought that was awesome. And then actually I was maybe the most impressed by the middle game when they didn't have an in-booth guest for multiple innings, when it was just those 3 on their own, no adult in the room. And I think they interviewed Joe Ryan or something, mid-game from the dugout, but it was just a 3-man podcast basically. Right, yeah. And I'm predisposed to enjoy that because that's the type of element, especially when we have guests, that we try to create. It's not an interview, it's just we have a third co-host for the day, and I think people enjoy that. And I know I saw some complaints, because there's always complaints about, well, they ignored huge elements of the game and you wouldn't know what the score was. There's a bug at the bottom of the screen that just tells you the count, it tells you the pitch. And yeah, okay, if you're just one of those people who kind of watches it in the background, you're going to have to look up more than you normally do to keep aware of what the count is and who's pitching and who's batting and all that. But again, for 3 out of 162 games, I think it was an excellent idea, executed well.
Sure.
I think it showed off both the chops that these guys have individually and collectively to just be interesting and discuss things in ways that is much closer to how they talk off camera or off microphone. Mm-hmm. When you see, as I do pretty much every day, Trevor Plouffe and Justin Morneau in some corner of the clubhouse talking about something. This is a much closer representation of those sort of discussions. And I personally found those very interesting. But I also think along the lines of what you were talking about, it allowed the behind the scenes folks, including, by the way, Audra Martin, who I thought really did a lot to hold that together in ways that maybe wasn't entirely apparent. Okay. Like they knew they could go to her and she could do her normal thing.
That's right.
And kind of bring
She's the safety net. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also she was a good fourth for that, because she also has a good mindset for that sort of thing. But I just know from a production side and seeing all the people doing work behind the scenes, all the stuff they recorded, and some stuff got cut. Somebody told me the next day we had to cut 5 different things we were going to do because Pablo was just so good. We just said, screw it. Let's just stick with Pablo in the booth. We don't have to show this. We don't have to show that. So I think it's a great example of what you said, which is they have a lot more leeway to try things. And it's a great example of it doesn't have to always be the status quo. And you can stretch your legs and, show more creativity. And maybe all but one thing is like, that was a dud. It wasn't. But even if it is, if you discover one element of that can be incorporated more often in sort of part of a normal broadcast, then you've got tremendous value added. And I said to somebody yesterday, I think this is an approach you can take with Corey Provis at the helm, where you can kind of go half normal, half players only, where you can have Corey, driving the thing, and Corey kind of keeping things in check, and Corey doing more of the traditional things that a play-by-play guy of, updating the count, the score, all this stuff. But I can tell you this, Corey has great conversations with me and you and other people. And also he's one of these guys who, kind of like Pablo Lopez, appears very straight-laced, but is also a bit of a goofball, which is why he gets along with Plouffe and Perkins. And so I think whether it's him with those three or maybe him with two of those three or something like that, I think there's an opportunity to kind of merge it a little more often, even if it's like once a month or something like that, where it's like today's the players only broadcast, not quite players only because Corey's going to be involved. But I can't say enough about pulling this off kind of on the fly as maybe a one-off thing that I think can have a much more of a future. And, 10% of the people hated it, I'm sure. But if most of the people...
Any change in baseball, they're going to have a good amount of people that's going to hate it, yeah.
But, you could tune into the radio, too, if you want to hear strike 2, strike 3, 1 and 2. I just thought this was such a good example of letting people kind of flow and what the end result can be from a creativity standpoint. And I actually think a lot of the elements from this past few days could be kind of standalone things that would be worth going back and listening to, because it wasn't directly attached. It's evergreen in a way because it wasn't directly attached to specific at-bats, specific innings. It kind of drew inspiration from the game in front of it. Yeah. But, the same way that someone might go back and listen to one of our old podcasts and be like, oh, they had a discussion about this. It holds up over years. There was a lot of that. And I also just thought it was funny. Like, it was fun and it was funny. And to me, that is so often missing in baseball, especially. And I just thought it was a huge success.
I think Provis, too, if were he to be involved.
You mean Wally Pipp? As soon as I see him today, I'm going to call him.
We've had conversations with him about how he is very open to a less structured stuff. In fact, that was one of the things that, coming from the radio side, he talked about if you, again, sign up for the Patreon, you can find a catalog. A year and a half ago, as Provis was taking over TV for the first time, he talked openly about how he was going to try and leave more room for people to watch the game and less of him talking, because that's the difference between radio and TV. And what this shows is that they are leaning more and more into that reality. And I think what we don't even really recognize how much of what we watch on TV has been shaped by the fact that radio came first.
Yeah.
And it takes, I'll go back to the point I made. It takes some courage to do something differently than it's been done. You don't know how it's going to turn out. If you are the producer of that show or you are in charge of that stuff, you don't get to jump in the middle and say, guys, this isn't working. We've got to get Corey back in here right now.
Corey's not like in the other room ready to break through the wall and come in.
It's just going to be a 3-hour disaster if it goes poorly. And instead, like you said, the good point is that not only do you end up with a real entertaining piece on this, or real entertaining 3 hours, you also have pieces of it that you can go back and say, we should try maybe doing a little bit more of that. We should try maybe doing a little bit more of that. Or maybe we can, maybe we don't do a 3-hour thing, but we're start inserting this sort of thing into the regular broadcast on a more regular basis.
Now, you said it was brave, or would you say courageous?
Courageous,
yeah. And I agree with that. But let me say this. If you all really want to show how courageous you are at Twins TV, Writer night. Writers only broadcast.
Or
We're
night with
available.
bonus on the Gray Duck deck. How about
Well,
that? That would be really courageous. Talk about foolhardy.
What's the rule with someone having alcohol poisoning on television? Like, I feel like that. If you really want to break the mold, and if you really want to get complaints from your viewers,
9x9 night at the ballpark.
I like that. Put bonus Hayes and Gleeman in the booth. The FCC will shut that thing down in like the either the FCC will shut it down or the poll ads will shut it down within 3 innings. So you're gonna have to have a backup plan for the final 7.5 innings of that thing. But if you really want to show how brave and courageous and creative you are, don't put some slick talking, good looking guy with good hair like Trevor Plouffe in the booth.
That's right. Yeah.
Put an Aaron Gleeman and a John Bonus in the booth and turn those mics on live, baby.
That's right. Yeah.
And let's go.
Let's see bonus in high definition.
Nobody. Yeah. Maybe radio. Actually, you know what? We're proof.
Maybe start with radio. Yeah.
That would be funny. We finally get on YouTube and we're like, let's go back to radio.
We got they got the three of us on TV, but the camera's pulled back to center field. It's all from the center field.
Yeah, they're like, actually, Twins TV now, we have access to 42 new cameras. We're not going to use any of them for these schlubs. No, but you could put, I'm trying to think, who's our best? You could put like, Phil, Betsy, and Bobby in there.
Sure. Yes.
They're presentable, right?
Yeah,
they're
right.
well spoken.
Sure. Phil just got a haircut. I saw him yesterday. He looks great.
Phil, that hair. I'm waiting for it to go back. I'm just waiting for it to go back. Oh. Anyway, so yeah, I want to give props to all the guys also behind the scenes. Their main producer, his name's Trevor Fleck, and Richie Palermo is one of their producers. There's a whole bunch of people behind the scenes that I'm leaving out. But I complimented to one of the higher ups yesterday. I said some of the things that I just said about what I thought of the broadcast, and they said that really means a lot because I don't know that you've ever praised anything we've done. And I said, well, that's not true, but I certainly understand the sentiment. Like, but I would argue, and you could attest to this. Praise from me should mean more because it's rare.
Well, that could be true. Yes, like tend to land on the skeptical side.
Someone meeting John Bonus and thinking, boy, he was nice to me, should mean nothing. John Bonus meets mass murderers and he's nice to them. But me saying something nice, unsolicited about something, especially something produced by the Minnesota Twins, I meant it.
It's high praise. Yeah. It's high praise.
Now, with that said, here are 10 things I hated. No, never mind. There's a heel turn. That would be. Okay. We should also note we didn't preview the draft, which is this Sunday night and Monday. But the first 4 picks the Twins have, they pick 16th, 36th, something like 55th and 85th, something like that. I would love for this to not be the case, but unfortunately, it's not that interesting to preview the baseball draft, especially when you pick in the middle or the end of the first round. When they had the 5th pick and they ended up with Walker Jenkins in one of the best draft classes in a long time, we spent a lot of time talking about the top 5 guys because everybody knew who the top 5 guys were and that the Twins were going to end up with one of them, and they did. This isn't a particularly strong draft. It's fine. It's more deep in terms of value instead of top heavy. It's very kind of pointless for me to try to predict who, here are 3 names they might end up
overall. Right. Yeah.
And the truth is the, failure rate of a number 16 pick is pretty high anyway. And even if they succeed, you might see them in the majors 4 years from now or something. So we will definitely on Monday morning, patreon.com/Gleeman. We will not only talk about the Pirates series and the end of the first half, but we will definitely get into whoever they end up picking because I'm sure I'll be doing a midnight Zoom with Sean Johnson to get insight on the guys they picked. So we will definitely talk about that Monday morning if you are into the draft. I just felt like spending 15 minutes talking about guys, high school pitchers and college infielders and stuff just kind of wasn't worth it.
If you want to dive into the draft, just stop by twinsdaily.com. We've got so much covered on the draft, including I think probably a live StreamYard during the draft as the Twins make that pick. So you will be able to get all of the coverage you ever want to get at twinsdaily.com.
Yes. If you've ever wanted to hear multiple people named Cody talk about a 17-year-old from Nebraska,
that's right.
I can't recommend it enough. I really
Fantastic.
Can't. Okay, we'll be back next week, same time, same YouTube, same whatever on the free show. But as we said at the beginning of the show, we'd love for at least this month.
Yeah.
I can promise you intrigue. Buyer, seller, and even if you stand pat, there's going to be rants to be had, rumors to be parsed, trades to be broken down, and
potentially emergency podcasts to come out. We will jump right on the
we will be doing
immediately
Monday and Wednesday shows for the rest of this month, like we always do, exclusively for Patreon subscribers. Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. But then, as you noted, if they make a trade, we will have a emergency reaction podcast to that trade either that night, if it's reasonable from a time, or at the very worst the next morning. And those are typically going to be available unless it happens Friday morning when we're doing this show. They'll be available exclusively to Patreon subscribers.
And you can now essentially get 2.5 months free all the way through to the end of the season. Basically, just sign up for the annual membership and you'll be good to go from now up until the next trade deadline in 2026. So
great way to support the show, great way to get some Twins talk, and a great way to also save 20%, which I always like to do.
Speaking of supporting the show, let's give a thank to our sponsors. We've got Game Time, Harry's, the Midnight Library of Baseball podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Black Stack Brewing. Now it's being distributed to all of Greater Minnesota. No reason not to get it. Stop by your favorite liquor store, the Black Stack Tap Room, to grab your favorite brew or to try something new.
Goodbye.
See ya. And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins talk.
Thank you.
Cleveland.